Every year I take a good chunk of time that year to break out these foods again and to put them into place in a routine for myself and eat those exclusively and get myself back into close to contest shape. And every single year, it doesn't take long to work. It works the same exact way. It's extremely reliable, and it's just what I do, and it works. There's no doubt that they are the 6 foods that work. They are not the only 6 foods that work by any means, but they are definitely 6 foods that do work. The reason they work is that they are pure examples of their macronutrient. So it's a great way to get that exact macronutrient, that exact example of a carbohydrate, and mix them in various ways to produce various effects in your diet. Egg whites, oatmeal, and again, these aren't the only foods, but these are the ones that I used. Chicken breast, canned tuna for its convenience, broccoli as your vegetable, sweet potatoes, yeah. So again, these are, and the reason I use them is they were very pure representatives of their macro. Like a sweet potato is almost solely fiber and carbohydrates. A chicken is just a pure hunk of just protein, especially when you, lean protein, especially when you boil it, which is how I used to prepare it. It's just a piece of protein. So you're not like with steak, getting fat and protein at the same time, so that if you increase your steak, you've also increased your dietary fats. It's a way to just increase the protein or decrease the carbs and be very precise, which I like to be when I'm dieting. So these foods allow you to do that in a very, very controlled way. But again, they're not the only foods that work. So that's clean eating. It's locking into these foods to the exclusion of all else.
Now, would you also say that's old school?
It's very old
school.
It's
very old school?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's really, it's lost a lot of popularity in the past, I'd say 10 years. In favor of...
Because it's just boring and hard to do.
It's boring. It's hard to do. It's very difficult. Not for me. I prefer doing it that way. If someone gave me an if it fits your macros diet, I really would have a huge problem because I don't tune in that way. I don't want to just be able to comprise my diet of things that are proteins and just pick out of anything, have my grocery list be different every week.
Give us an example of what a daily diet would look like for a fits your macro type of person and where the pitfalls come in for that.
Well, they're
eating candy bars into the day because they realize they have this much.
There are no pitfalls for it, depending on what your goal is. If you're off season, hell, that's the way I eat off season. Right. I will come up with, well, I want to hit about 2 grams of protein per pound of body weight. I want to hit a certain amount of carbs and a certain amount of fats. And I will do that using a whole host of different foods. It's a great way to eat off season. It's very effective. I think it's actually more effective to do that off season than it is to lock into a certain set of foods off season. I'm not against if it fits your macros. I think it lacks in a pre-contest diet, especially towards the end. And by the end, I mean the last 8 weeks. When you're really down to the nitty-gritty, you're trying to go from, say, 6% body fat to 4% body fat with a maintenance of lean mass at the same time. I think it's extremely difficult to do that when you're eating pretty much anything that falls into a certain category of food.
Does it lack structure as well, though?
No.
Because
it does not lack
take
structure.
a 24-hour period.
It doesn't lack structure. It just lends too much variety. And I don't think all proteins, carbs, and fats are created equally when it comes to how they affect your body and how they're, it's not that I think it, it's just that it's the truth. It's scientifically true that foods coming in are not metabolized the exact same way. For instance, I don't believe that white rice and sweet potato are created equally. I don't believe that a Pop-Tart and white rice are created equally. I think they affect the body in very different ways. And when you're trying to get lean, you don't want carbs coming in that are going to do a certain thing when they come in versus another thing. But even when you're using it intelligently, I think it lacks in terms of specificity for getting the ultimate in conditioning. When you are dieting for a show, you want to have the least amount of what I call metabolic splash in the pond. And a lot of carbohydrates create this insulin surge. You want to keep that as still as possible so that you create the internal environment for fat loss and muscle maintenance right until the end. And there are certain foods that lend themselves better to do that than others, and that's just a fact. So an if it fits your macros diet would look something like this. They have your proteins, your carbs, and your fats, certain amount of allotted grams, and grams for those 3 macronutrients, and then you can get them in with whatever foods represent those macros. Right. It doesn't matter, yeah. And then timing is not as important either, which I don't agree with as well.
Yeah, that's the thing. You had that argument with that kid on the internet. He was saying that, bodybuilders have historically eaten every 2 hours. And that's because you want to keep getting your protein every 2 hours so your body doesn't start using its muscle and all
There's
that.
There's more reasons than
right.
that.
But that was always like the historic reason was like to keep yourself in an anabolic state and not go catabolic. But there was a kid on the internet who was only a 19 or 20-year-old kid, very book learned, very smart, and Dave had a pretty well publicized battle with this kid.
What he has is what so many of these internet warriors have. They have the beginning of knowledge. They have the book smarts, they've studied some studies, and they've learned some facts. These facts may or may not translate in the real world of muscle building. Oftentimes, they don't.
Bodybuilding has always defied science.
Bro science is a guy who's pretty savvy with his own body, pretty in touch with how his body's responding to various stimuli, who has figured out how to take science and apply it to himself and others if he's a coach, and take those tenets and turn them into something that will work, whether or not it looks right. And sometimes on paper it doesn't look right, and in reality it looks a completely different way, but it works. So Ian has the beginnings of knowledge. It's going to take him another 10 to 15 to 20 years to have the rest of that knowledge, and that's only if he decides to take his body to that level, which I don't think he's ever going to do. Right. If he tries to be 240 in the single digits body fat, he'll learn really quickly that you have to eat every 2 hours. You have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do these things. Yeah. What happens when you get to the point where you've built enough muscle that you require 7,000 calories for maintenance? You're not going to eat that in 1 or 2 meals. You don't have the capacity to eat that much food at once. This is how the eating every 2 hours thing came about. Yeah. A bodybuilder built himself up to the point where he needed 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 calories to exist. And in order to do that, he had to keep adding in more food, which created more meals, which closed that meal cadence until you're eating every couple hours. Yeah. So that's how it happened. But someone like Ian was not going to know that because he's not gone there yet.